Dustin, it's great to see you, man. We were just talking beforehand that it's been almost like a year and a half since we last talked, and I know it was over the phone. So it's great to see you, man. You're looking great, and congratulations on the new music that we're going to be talking about, the hard work that you've been doing. How have you been holding up, man, during this new world with the pandemic and how things are changing? The fact, 2 years ago, who the hell heard of Zoom, and this is what we're part of now.
Yeah, man. No, it is great to see you. It's been a lot. A lot has happened, since we last chatted. With all of the pandemic stuff like what you're talking about and everything. I mean, it's really just influenced new music, right? It's just influenced me creating more. And luckily enough, this summer we've been able to get out on the road and do some shows, and those shows were phenomenal. I think in some way, like the pandemic kind of lended itself to allowing those shows to be so great because I think people were hungry for it. And, so we were really feeling the love and feeling the energy from the stage, and just the way that the audience was so engaged in every single one of those shows. So this past summer has been pretty busy of, working on new music, preparing for this new single, Get Go, and being able to be out on the road. A lot of these shows, they came in kind of last minute, some of them like a few weeks before, but, so we didn't know what to expect going into the summer, but I'm so grateful that all these opportunities have came through and that we've had the opportunity. So now it's like, let's ramp up, let's do more shows, let's put out more music. So I'm really, really excited to go into like this new chapter here in the fall with Get Go.
Leading into the shows, your first one, what was it like professionally in setting this up, but emotionally too, not being able to perform live on stage? It must have been a queasy kind of feeling because it's an unknown aspect. Before, you're just like, hey, you know what? We hit the stage, we do this, we do that. Because again, the new world, whole different subject. Again, professionally, what was that like preparing for it? And emotionally, what was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, I didn't feel nervous. And that was the thing I thought I would. Like I thought, getting back out onto the stage, especially, like we did a show in Shaunavon, Saskatchewan, and that was my first show with like a full band in I don't know how long. And so that was back in July, and I was like, for sure, I'm gonna feel nervous about this. For sure, walking out onto that stage, like I'm gonna feel nervous. And it was the exact opposite. It was so energizing. Like, I mean, it was the most like I actually had my back was hurting so much that day for some reason, slept on it wrong, whatever. And I was like, oh man, like this is gonna be like I'm not gonna be able to move around like I want to do and everything. And the moment I stepped out onto that stage, I was like, oh, like I guess this is how I'm gonna deal with back pain from now on. I guess like if any part of my body hurts, I'm just gonna walk it onto stage because it completely disappears. Like I don't know if it's like an adrenaline thing or if it's a connection from people. I think really what it was just the audience and I feeding off of one another energetically. We're really we had a really good relationship right out of the gate because they were all hungry for it. And so that's kind of what I mean. Like, I think everybody, including us, those on stage and those working, on the engineering side and everything, like we all have been craving this. So for every single opportunity that is coming through for all of us, it's like, yes, absolutely, let's do it. But for sure, like I wasn't sure how my body would react. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like get all nervous and like shaky and stuff like that. Go back to like my first shows, when I was like 15. I was like, oh, like is it gonna be one of those things again? I'm gonna have to kind of restart. But no, it was fabulous.
Now, remind me again, you had an album out during the pandemic, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So we dropped an album called Unscripted,
Right.
and yeah,
Well, okay, so curious. That music was written before the pandemic, right?
yeah. So a lot of those songs, except for two on there, were actually released before the album came out. So I can't remember how many. I think there was Wake Up, People, Unscripted, Love Problem. Those were all done pre-pandemic, and I think that was it. I want to say like it's I don't know the whole pandemic thing, and it's been so long, right? Like it's hard to kind of like go back in my head and be like, what do we do? But yeah, we did some live off the floor stuff that was during the pandemic, and that found its way on the album as well. And so that stuff, again, like kind of going back to like that idea of like the pandemic has inspired a lot of creativity and a lot of things, because we wouldn't have got that live off the floor stuff, you know, out of not being in a pandemic situation. I mean, maybe, you know, it's hard to say, right? Because we're not in that alternate universe, we're in this one. But, you know, the way that it went down was like, man, we're not playing live shows. Like, how do we do this? And how do we get new music to people in that sort of live setting to kind of capture that energy? So that's what inspired that. And it inspired the single off that album, which was Broken Lonely. You know, I had a lot of time to be kind of introspective last summer and to sit down and just write songs and talk about my feelings in the songs. And so Broken Lonely was one of the songs that came out of that. It was the most honest song that I've probably ever written, because it was just so straightforward. It was just, here's my story, here's what's going on, take it or leave it. And you know, it was, you know, the signing with Open Road and everything that had happened the end of 2020 or into 2021, I guess. That was like, you know what, we also think that people might be feeling this way right now, you know, with Broken Lonely and the whole sentiment behind it. And so that's what kind of inspired that to be a single. But when I wrote it, it was just like, here's how I'm feeling, like, you know. So it was really, really cool, you know, now that we're with Open Road and everything, for them to believe in the music in that type of way, which is like, you know what, like, tell your story. We want you to be honest. We want you to be yourself and be your authentic self. And we think that people are going to, you know, respond to that. And so for an artist, that is like, that's golden, man. That's like the best thing that you could possibly ask for. So this team has been amazing. And, you know, working on this new single, it's the same thing. It's like, we can tell that you believe in this, you know, we can, and we feel it too, right? That's the thing. Like, I want everybody on the team to feel it. I want everybody to feel excited about it. And so that's kind of how we're, you know, making these decisions. And I think that's just what makes it so inspiring for me musically, and so energizing for me musically, because I know that I've got this great team behind me to be able to put out the music that I really believe in.
Did the pandemic change the stories and even maybe the style of music that you would write? In other words, if this pandemic never happened, this new music that you're talking about would have been written, would have been created, would it be written the way it has been, or would it have been different from, say, the way you wrote and felt previously before the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it for sure changed the writing. Absolutely. I think without a doubt, like, um, and it's kind of hard to put my finger on like what it was, but I just think it was a lot of me time. I think it was a lot of like sitting here on my own and working through songs. You know, it's a little bit different when you're down in Nashville and you're in the room with other writers and stuff. That's a different experience, and that is such a good experience. It's a great experience. It gets great songs. It gets great results to be in the room with people and to be able to feed off of them. And so the pandemic, and I think, you know, we're hearing this in so much music, it's just coming from a little bit of a different place, you know. And, you know, Nashville has been pretty like open about, you know, like kind of trying to get back into the room as much as artists and writers can, you know what I mean? Because they recognize that value of just how important that is. But at the same time, I think there's a value that's been untapped for a long time that we have been able to discover through this pandemic, which is sitting down on your own and just writing a song, kind of thinking through stuff a little bit differently than you would in a co-writing setting, you know, taking those ideas to different places than you might in a co-writing setting. You know, you're not restricted by time. There's no restrictions really. It's just let's play with stuff and see what happens. And so it's definitely going to yield a different result. For me, that result was, you know, pretty introspective. There are a lot of demos that I did. You know, some of them might see the light of day at some point, you know, on an upcoming album or something like that. But you know, some of those songs are very just me, really personal. And it was me just like having to get that stuff out. And I'm not sure that's something that I've quite experienced in that way before. Because I feel like I had different outlets. I had a lot of live shows to, you know, express myself, you know, co-writers and stuff like that to bounce stuff out, and just like human interaction. Like that can relieve a lot of energy. So when you're all kind of cooped up and everything, it was like, how do I get this out? How do I get these feelings out? And what's the best way? And the easiest way for me to do that was to write songs about it. And so it's, you know, definitely a journey emotionally and mentally, I found, you know, to be able to get that out because it's like you're kind of unlocking something that was kind of locked up before, something that's kind of bottled up. And so that took a little bit of trial and error. Broken Lonely was a perfect example of it. I tried to write that song, I don't know how many times, until I was eventually just like, I'm just going to say it. Like, I'm just going to say what I'm feeling, what I mean. And then hopefully that does the job. and it did. And that was like, it was like a breath of fresh air, and it's kind of therapeutic. And so, I kind of just kept doing that a little bit. But the pandemic definitely influenced the art for sure.
One thing I'm getting a kick out of and talking to a lot of artists and how they've been recording their music and the creative ways they've been doing it. One person was telling me about how they padded up their closet to record music to send out because, of course, with the pandemic, sometimes you're allowed in studio, sometimes you weren't. You had to be creative in who and how you worked with your producer and sending music through Zoom. What were some of the creative things that you had to do during this time in recording?
Man, yeah, like Together We're Strong. So this was a single that we did for Unison Benevolent Fund.
I remember that one, man.
Yeah, so I feel like we probably talked about that
We did.
Yeah. So that song was all the artists, I think, except for like Chris Buck and the Heels. I think maybe there were like a couple others who went into studios and captured. Corey Marks went to the studio and captured as well. But most of the artists were recording from home. So they were like set up just like that. Like, I don't know if they were doing the padding up the closet thing or if they were just like in their bedrooms or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that was like a technical challenge for sure, to make sure that everybody can like sound cohesive, recording on like a USB mic or like whatever they got, right? Whatever they can do. Cause we're like, we want your talent on this song. Like, how do we get that? And so with all of the restrictions around that time that were being implemented, it was quite a challenge. I'm lucky enough, to have this little home studio and to be able to create in here. And, like I've acoustically treated it and everything like that. And it sounds great in here. And so it's like a really nice place for me to be able to create. But it's definitely like way different from, being in an actual like studio environment with other people. This is a very isolated sort of space. So some of the artists that I've worked with, come over from, time to time, and I like to record them here, and I like to not do things remotely as much as possible, just because you do have a different way that you're listening, that you're able to kind of engage with that artist and like make the best product as possible. And for Gitgo, it was no different, only at this time, like I'm the producer and the artist. And so they brought on another producer, Doug Romano, in Toronto. And so I went up there to his studio and we worked on that together. And that just, I mean, it's just so elevating. And especially with a producer like him, who has made so many great records, he's coming at it kind of from that macro place. He's kind of zooming out, looking at that big picture and being like, what's really going to say this and what's going to say this in the best way. And a lot of that is being in the room together and vibing on it and like emotionally connecting on where that song is at, to make sure that we retain that in all of like the nitty gritty of the production. Right. So being able to like be in the room with another creator is huge when it comes to pretty much everything. But yeah, I mean, back to like the songwriting and stuff, it's just, we're in just such an interesting time where we're both, trying to do that. We're trying to have this like physical, connection with people. And at the same time, like we're isolated a lot, where we're thinking a lot about ourselves and our situations and thinking about the world around us. And so we've kind of got two worlds sort of happening at the same time, which for Gitgo is really interesting.
It has been a crazy time. What is the one thing that you've learned about yourself during this pandemic that, say, you didn't know about yourself before, that maybe you discovered, or even if there's something that you didn't know you could do that you discovered that you did? Like, for example, for me, being able to do these kind of interviews, I never thought in a million years I'd ever be able to do it. And I'm doing this constantly. So that's kind of like something I'm very proud of myself. What about yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I can't really put my finger on one thing where I feel like I've really kind of grown or like discovered something. I think there's just a lot of little things. I think in terms of my performance capabilities, I've had a lot of time to reflect and work with my coach Mika on just really honing in on how connected I can be with a song, you know, vocally. And that's not something that I really had the opportunity to do before because we're busy, right? We're on the road, we're doing stuff, and it's like, just how do I, you know, get through a show vocally? How do I make sure that everything's good? So this has given me time to then dig into that. On the production side, it's like, let's explore, let's find cool new ways to do stuff.
Mhm.
And so there, it's like, how, you know, for me, it's almost like a little philosophical changes there, you know, sort of like how, like, what's the approach, what's the best way to approach it, you know, technically, yeah, like you can kind of learn and dig into stuff, but it's more like, what's the big picture kind of approach, like how do I get what's in here
Yeah.
out and coming out of those speakers, and how do I do that most effectively? And a lot of that is just trial and error, and letting yourself be vulnerable in that situation. um you know, and I guess maybe that is the underlying theme, you know, maybe vulnerability is the underlying theme, and that, you know, in my art, and um just in the way that I perform, you know, even just with these past bunch of shows, it's like I've been a lot more vulnerable. And maybe that just started by me being vulnerable with myself, you know, writing those songs throughout the pandemic and stuff, and just allowing myself to open up to myself and discover who I really am. And maybe that's made me more comfortable with the world.
It's definitely working, man. That's why we're talking, because of course you've mentioned it before, but I want to make this the official part of it. New single out, my friend. What's the new single called and what's it about?
Yeah. So this new single, Get Go, this is about the person I haven't met yet. And that was not a discovery that I made right out of the gate. Like, so this song actually came in as a pitch. There were some fabulous writers on this song, Josh Miller, Pavel Dolbiak, and Joe Don Rooney. And so this song started as a pitch, and like, I mean, the first time I heard that hook, the chorus, I was like, that's the song. I was like, that's this. And like, I just knew, right? And this is a love song, and so like, I'm a single dude, like, you know, I've been like in relationships before, sure, and whatever, but um it's not like I could clearly like identify with having experienced what this song is talking about. And so I couldn't really put my finger on like what it was like that drew me to this so much. And then, you know, I worked on some of the lyrics and stuff like that, started kind of get into the production, and I was like, oh, like this this is about the person I haven't met yet. This is like, this is telling a story that I have yet to live. You know what I mean? This is an experience that I want to have with somebody. And that just, it just completely took on a new life for me. And I was like, that's why it connected with me. And I can finally understand. Um, and so, you know, now as we kind of go forward, it's like I'm looking for those connections with people, you know, as we go into playing shows, and that sort of thing. And even just talking about it here, it's like I'm putting this out into the universe, you know. And I think that's pretty cool, you know, being able to talk about it in this way, and then, you know, going to take this song on stage for the first time here in October. I think, I mean, it's just so special to be able to sing a song like this that's talking about having this type of connection with somebody, and actively looking for that connection, actively seeking those connections with people. And I don't know. I just think it's really special, and I love the song. And you know, so when it came to when it came to the production, and when it came to kind of building this track out and how it sounded, that's where it came from. It was like, how do we not only make this have the impact that it had on me the first time I heard it, like have that like lightning bolt of a spark that just hits you. Because I mean, like, you know, when I get pitches, or if I'm writing songs, whatever, they might just be voice notes. They might just be like me and a guitar, like whatever it is. But there's that feeling. And with Get Go, it was no different. It was like, that was that feeling. So then production wise, you know, to get to that final single, it's like, how do we get there? That's one of the goals, right? But the other goal was to be able to like embed myself within that track, um, to have that kind of connection, you know what I mean? To create that sort of connection musically, and to create that warmth, um, and that's kind of depth. And so all of those things, you know, as we talk about sort of that macro stuff, and um, this is kind of what Doug and I sort of worked through with this single, which is like, how do we really, really capture this and nail this so that it says exactly what it means to me.
I am looking forward to sometime in the future when we talk that this song gets the fill in the blank and we get to talk about
Yeah,
who this future person is. Man, that would just be a very, very cool story to complete.
totally.
So my fingers are crossed for you on this one, man.
Thanks.
Definitely. My fingers are also crossed too. Is there an album or EP or something following all of this?
Well, so right now, it's all about the songs, man. So if we have some great songs
Hmm.
and we want to put them together on an album, that's what we're gonna do. Um, but yeah, I mean, as of right now, like this is all get go, and then looking into like how are we continuing this narrative? How are we continuing my story? How are we
Yeah.
telling my story in the most real way possible? And that just starts with the songs. So um, continuing to do writing. Hopefully, we're going to be able to get back down to Nashville here really soon. We're kind of looking at this fall to do that. Depending on all the factors, right? So um, and like I've spent a lot of time writing a lot of songs, so I mean, we may already have an album. It's just kind of like it's kind of one of those things. I think as a writer, it's like you're never really done. It's the same thing with producing songs. It's like you could just keep going all day long. So I think until somebody tells me to stop and put the stuff out, I'm just gonna keep on going and creating stuff. Yeah.
It's crazy to think this though, man, but are you already thinking about the holidays? Because in a blink of an eye, we're going to have snow all over and it's going to be jingle bells and everything else going on there, man. Are you thinking about that? Are you preparing for that?
Oh, I'm
Whether it
thinking
be
about it.
family wise or personally, like, or professionally?
Well, I hope we can do something with people. Man, I
Yeah.
miss Christmas parties. I miss Christmas parties so much. Um I just love Christmas parties. And like with family and stuff, it's been like a couple of years, I guess, since
Yeah.
or at least, the past year, I've not really been able to connect like that. So I'm definitely thinking about the holiday season, and I'm particularly excited about this Hunter Brothers project that's coming out. And you'll find out why. But this is going to be really, really cool, and so that's kind of got me thinking about it as well. Wraps up a little bit musically, and I'm thinking about doing something along those lines for myself. Not sure yet, but maybe. And as I work with other artists and stuff as well. And so I've been thinking holidays since like June, realistically.
I believe it, man. Like this, oh my goodness. This year has just flown. It's crazy. To me, it still feels like February or March of the beginning of this year. And now, like I said, we're heading into October. I mean, think about we got Halloween, we've got Thanksgiving, and then we've got, like I said, the Christmas season, New Year's, and then we start it all over again. It is nuts. But the cool thing is, as we enter towards the end of this year, we've got your music to help us get along and shows coming up too, man. So I'm looking forward to all of that. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your new single. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me, man, and us getting the chance to talk. I'm crossing fingers that we can talk again before the end of the year hits because it sounds like you got a lot of great stuff going on, man.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure to talk to you as always, Rudy. I appreciate you taking the time, and yeah, we'll absolutely try and connect here before the new year for sure. Yeah.